Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. So this inshallah will be a brief lecture that discusses how to perform a literature review, and in the upper left corner you can see our objectives. First of all, we will discuss the importance of a good literature review. Yani, why can't we just look for one or two articles, read them, and then just proceed with our research? فهنتكلم عن importance. Then what should you prefer? What should you prepare before you perform your literature review? We'll also talk about how to use the search build function on Pubmed. So yeah, we'll talk about it theoretically and then practically, and then how to finally organize the article's results. طيب? Okay, so starting with the okay, and also I will add in the description below some timestamps. So if this is your first time watching this video, I recommend that you watch the whole thing. If it isn't and you just want a refresher for your new article or for your new literature review, then you can jump directly to the practical section. Okay, so let's start. Bismillah. So first of all, what's the importance of the literature review? Well, as I have written, it's to avoid repeating already answered questions and to target some remaining gaps in the knowledge. The process of research is very hard. I mean, it's not necessarily hard, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And the last thing that you want to do is that you would repeat someone else's effort. خلاص? So we should try to. So all of this is to avoid quote unquote reinventing the wheel. You don't want to after finishing your article, you find out that someone else has already made a systematic review about the topic that you missed, just because your literature review was not comprehensive enough. Okay. Okay. So that's just in general the importance of literature review. Plus, having a good literature review will make writing the article so much easier because you'll have a lot of more references to look at and compare and contrast, and you'll be much better able to better tune your article to be useful at the end. Also, so that you can learn from their mistakes and to improve on them. Okay, so I think that gives you the importance of the literature review. Moving on. So, what should you prepare beforehand? Well, you should at least have your research question. The title is irrelevant, but at least your research question. Okay, and through that question, you'll be able to get your keywords or your PICO or your PCOT if you want to add some time in study design. So, I'm going to work with an example of a research that I've already been working on for a while now. So, so this was our research question here. I'll just enlarge it. So our research question was, what are the differences between discharged and suspected COVID-19 patients who visited the R again and those who did not? Basically, we wanted to look at the difference in characteristics between those two groups so that we can helpfully be able to better expect which patients can be discharged home and which patients may need to be admitted to an observation unit. Okay, so this was our research question. Now, based on this question, so I expect you at this point of the topic, of our presentation, that you kind of work at the same time. So I prefer if you're also working on, if you pause this video and you finalize your research question. Okay, so the goal in your research question is that you want it to be very clear and specific, and it's answerable. Okay. So yeah, pause the video and finish on your research question. Okay, so once you're back, we'll try to extract the PICO or the keywords from this question. Okay, so PICO or PCOT stands for P is for patient, I is for intervention, C is for comparison, O is for outcome, and T, it could be either time or your study design. Now, all of this is determining the PCOT for your question is important for So many steps later on, but it's still very important even here for the literature review. Okay, so this is the research question. So what are the differences between the discharged suspected COVID-19 patients who visited the ER again and those who did not? So we're trying to compare and contrast between those two groups, patients who were discharged and came back and those who did not. Our aim was to see if we can predict which patients will need admission from the first time versus those who are usually improve and don't really need to be observed in the ER. So first of all, our patient population, okay, our P is COVID-19 patients. Okay, our intervention or exposure is whether they were dischargeable, discharge, they were low risk, their symptoms, and if they were mild cases, like usually some mild. So these are the things that would have the patient to be discharged from the first time. This is the intervention or exposure. Now this is more straightforward in studies where it's like an interventional study. Okay. Otherwise, you just need to use a different keyword. So basically, what's the other characteristics that you're kind of like comparing against the outcome? So in our study, the outcome is basically a second visit to the ER or deterioration, mortality, and morbidity. But mainly, our main outcome is the second visit to the ER. Okay. So that's our outcome. Here, our intervention exposure could be summarized as patient characteristics. Characteristics. Okay. So let's say that if you had an intervention or a study that was like an interventional study, so you would put for example, your interventional drug here, for example, like paracetamol, and then here in your comparison, you would put your placebo, for example. Our study design here, it will be more of a prospective cohort. Okay, so this kind of gives you an idea of the important keywords for our study. So the next step would be determining how to build your search function on Pubmed. So first of all, let's talk theoretically how to build your search function. Okay, so your search function will be consistent of those same terms, but in a certain order. So basically, I'll just make it like a graphically clear. So let's start with the patient, okay? هنبدأ ب COVID-19 patients. COVID-19 or COVID-19. Now, an alternative to COVID-19, I would be like, let's say, coronavirus, or let's say we also want to look into articles who have MERS instead of coronavirus, so we'd add MERS. Now, notice that between the different options for the same category, these are all under the patient category. So within the category, we're using the term or. We're using the or function. Clear? Now, let's say if I want to move to the and, if I want to move to the intervention or exposure, I'll have to use the term and. And I'll show you why this is important in a second. So let's say here as patient characteristics, we're looking at like let's say low risk patients or asymptomatic, or comorbid, or mild. Basically, any factor that can be considered as useful in the decision whether to admit or discharge a patient. Okay. And finally, for the last step, we're going to post here the disposition. So, or at least the outcome. So the outcomes that I really care about is the second visit to the ER for our study. But in my literature review, I want to make it just a bit broader. So we're going to add, looking for, like, other than the second visit to the ER, looking for any deterioration, mortality, morbidity, recovery, or resolution. So that's all of the different terms. Now, when we come to the search builder, we'll be using something like a mesh term for example, for COVID-19 or for coronavirus, a coronavirus mesh. So mesh stands for, let's see. I forgot what it means, but basically it means a medical subject headings. So there are a lot of synonyms. For example, for an asymptomatic, you could say asymptomatic or symptom-free or whatever. When you write a mesh for asymptomatic, basically in the search function, it will be written as such. So for example, asymptomatic mesh. So basically, when you add asymptomatic mesh, it will include all of the different subheadings under the term asymptomatic that have a similar meaning. So this will make sure that you're not missing out on any articles that have the same meaning, that use a term that has the same meaning as asymptomatic. Okay? So that's the importance of the mesh terms. Now, why are we using these search functions, the or and the add? Let's say, for example, we have a search article that uses the term COVID-19 and comorbidities and second visit. So using this search function, this article will show up among the results. However, if you only use like MERS and low risk and second visit, that article, even though it's relevant to me, it won't show up if you do not use this function. Okay, so this kind of like casts a really big umbrella that makes sure that everything that's important to me will be included in the search results. Okay, so yeah, that concludes the theoretical part. Now let's go to the practical part. Okay, so yeah, let's go here. So we'll start with our advanced, okay, with our mesh. So you'll just have to go here to this tab and scroll down until you reach the mesh. So here it is, mesh. Let's start with, for example, COVID-19 and see if we get any results. COVID-19. So you would want to look at anything that's relevant to you, and you'll have to tick it. So vaccine is not relevant, serotherapy, diagnostic testing. So yeah, this could be relevant. The disease or disorder, sure. And that's it. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, sure. The proteins are not really relevant to me. The assay, the drug treatment, not really relevant. So yeah, it's those three. So I'll click on here. After you tick the relevant terms, just click as add to search builder. But between all of them, as we mentioned, you'd want an or, since they all carry the same meaning. So add to search builder, or. Then I would copy this here. Then I'd open a second tab for Pubmed. So this is the search tab where you'd be able to add or to build your search. So this is the advanced search builder. So this is the search terms. I just copied it from here. So here we have COVID-19 or the other terms that I copied. Okay. So yeah. Then let's say you want to also use MERS. So we can add here coronavirus infections, Middle Eastern, and so on. So add or, add it to our search. I'll cut it, and then I'll add it here as well. So or, and there you go. So this now has our patient search function. So now I want to add the asymptomatic or the comorbid, the risk, basically the patient characteristics function. So let's say patient characteristic, patient characteristics. Let me just make sure of the spelling. Okay, so we were not able to find a term for it. That's fine. Let's say okay. Let's say asymptomatic. Okay, so asymptomatic infections. So asymptomatic disease. And that's pretty much everything that's relevant to us. Was in the first page. So yeah. Okay, so there we have the asymptomatic. So what's different now is that even though there's an or between all of these different synonyms, يعني الأشياء اللي لها نفس المعنى, we're going to use an and between the COVID-19, between this tab and this tab. Okay, هحط هنا and. So yes, you can see here it's and. Okay. So yeah. Now it's added as an and. You can see the and here. Okay. So then you'll continue with the rest of the terms. You'll keep on adding ors with this function. Okay, so for example, let's add mild. Okay. Okay, so that gives us no results. Let's go with comorbidities. Let's make sure of the spelling. Okay, yeah, so this is a proper mesh term. Okay, so what you need to add is just include the restriction of topics, trends, subheadings. Okay, now I just want to add this mesh term. Yeah, the page wasn't loading correctly. So basically I just add it. So this is the comorbidity mesh. So this is a good example of a mesh, a proper mesh term. So yeah, or comorbidities mesh. Okay. So I'll just move on. Now, ideally, we'd want to add all of the different synonyms, or basically synonyms means words with the same meaning. The more you add here, the better. So let's see. Now for our outcome, let's just, you'll do the same thing with the outcome. So let's say you'll use mortality. Okay. Mortality mesh. You'll have to tick all of the subheadings that are relevant to you. Then you click on or and add them. And then you just add, then you'll add like and you'll paste them. And so on and so forth. Okay. So you'll keep on adding those modifiers until you add all of them. If let's say you were not able to find a mesh term, that's fine. You can just add it manually yourself. So for example, previously we searched for, I think, low risk or patient characteristics, but it did not show up. That's fine. You can just add it yourself in the relevant category. So for example, just like next to asymptomatic. So yeah, here. You can just add it. So you open a quotation, patient characteristics. Then or 1 second. So just add it in the middle of the relevant category. So let's say patient characteristics or yeah تمام. فمو لازم يكون الشيء موجود as a mesh for you to add it in your search function. تمام. Just make sure that you add it in the relevant section. So I added the patient characteristics في السكشن حقت اللي هو I اللي هو intervention or the exposure. تمام. Okay. So when you finish adding all of the terms, so one can mesh or non-mesh terms, you can use the search. خلاص. So basically, this is the list of all of the articles that have showed up using your search function. طيب. They have changed the layout, but basically we have a bit of too many results. Okay, which is fine. So at this step, what we would do, we'd go back and we'd add more modifiers. So this is how we edit our search. So to limit it, for example, we can make it more specific. I'll just use the proper search that I've used for this article before. Deleting this. Okay. So yeah, if you do it properly and if you add all of the terms, you might get something with this number of results. So once you're below the 1000 limit, usually you can just go over it manually. If you don't want to go over it manually, you could just at least look at the articles, see what is common between all of the articles that are not relevant to you, and then go back and add a modifier, add basically a not, so that you can exclude them. So let's say you had a lot of articles that were regarding a vaccine. So I'd add not vaccine, and then you'll add that. Then you'll search again. So this might decrease the number of results. So 1 second. So for example, not vaccine. So this would theoretically lower the number of results. Okay. Because you're excluding some. So you can keep on doing that. So you look at the articles, you see what's the common factor between the articles that are not relevant, then you add it to your not. So yeah. Finally, now that you have a list of articles, what should you do with them? So what's the next step? The next step is for you to organize them. طيب? So this is an example of what it looks like after you have organized the relevant articles to you. So as you're going over them, you won't add. You should have prepared like a table. طيب فيكم مثلا أول عمود is a number, then the number in Pubmed, just for making it easier to reference, the year of publishing, the title of the article, the link, and the comments. So you just read the abstract and you add any comments of like the outcome, or did they do well, or whatever. So you won't add all of the 433 articles, just the ones that you actually see are actually relevant to your topic. So for example, go over here, blood safety, epidemiology, transmission review of coronavirus. So yeah, this might be relevant. So COVID-19 patients, clinical characteristics, discharge rate, fatality rate, and meta-analysis. So this would be an example of something that I would add to my table. Okay, so this is number 6. So here would be number 1. This is the first article, number 6. Then the year of publishing. So it's 2020. I'll add the title, then the link to the article, just so that it'll be easier for me to go back to it later on. And then I just read the outcomes and I'll summarize them here. وهكذا until you finish your literature review. So yeah. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll know how to prepare your literature review and the importance of it. And having this table in the end will make it easier for you to go back and find the article that's referencing what you need. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them my way. وبس والله بالتوفيق.